Welcome back, Grand Line Gaming here with another deck profile. Ended up going to a tournament, getting first place. We went 5 rounds, I went 5-0, and I was piloting green, purple Dofi. So today I'm just going to be going through the deck profile, letting you know what exactly, what was good, what am I planning on keeping, making maybe some changes potentially I'm looking at. So we're going to go through the deck profile right now. I'm just going to go through the lines here. So first we'll go through our searchers. I got 4 Bueno Fiesta and then the 4 Namis. This is like your heart and soul of the deck for the most part. Searching in this deck, you play with card advantage the entire time. Having the majority of your cards, you're at like 6+ cards throughout the entire game. And with the Buena Fiesta, it's always a good starter. Always searches. You can search out that Nami for the next turn to play out. And the Nami is just so good on play or when attacking. If I rest a Dawn, I can go ahead and look at the top 3 cards and add a film type card or character to my hand, which is great, and when you keep this alive and you keep swinging with it, keep using this when attacking effect, you just keep adding more and more cards to your hand, so it's really good. For the next section here, these are going to be the 4 drops that I play. I run 4 Utahs along with 4 Zoros, and then the 2 Brooks. So 4 Utahs and 4 Zoros, this is pretty standard for the most part. Utah's really good, great blocker. You always play it off of the 7-drop Luffy, or you play the Zoro off the 7-drop Luffy too, or you can just play a base. They're pretty good. The Utah, pretty much, it's a blocker, but on block, I could go ahead and minus a Dawn, and then rest a cost 5 or less on my opponent's side of the field, which is great. Zoro's just a vanilla 4-drop 6K, really good. It's also a 1K counter too as well, same with Utah. I've been messing around with the Brooks. This is just here pretty much for any kind of red matchup, specifically Law. Law moves pretty fast, and so to kind of keep up with that pace, I play the Brook, and I kind of combo that off with the Nami, and then maybe potentially Search depending on the curve I'm on. And so Brook, during the tournament, it wasn't too bad. It did pretty. It was mainly just sitting in my hand for the most part. Never really saw the curve where you play the Luffy, then combo off the Brook, and then play the Nami. For this deck specifically, Brook's only main target would be this Nami for the most part. So it's really kind of hard to kind of find that in there. And so there's might be a possibility I might cut this potentially. I just have it in here just for the matchups that, go a little bit faster, and also against like Nami too as well, where they're able to just, you're able to keep swinging with this card for the most part. Play this and play a Nami so you can establish board and swing a lot faster too as well. Then for the next section, I just have the Guild Tesoro. I only run 2 of this guy. The reason why I'm only running 2 is just because it doesn't have a counter on it. And so if on curve, if you're able to play it, it's really good. Pretty much when attacking, -2 Dawn, and then go ahead and draw 2 cards. Typically, you want to play this whenever you have 10 Dawn. That way, the next turn, you're just back at 10 Dawn again. There are cases where in the tournament where I did use it early, I was like on my 8 Dawn turn, just because I needed to draw 2 more counters to be able to survive the following turn. So I skipped out on dropping the 10-drop Dofi, and I decided to use his ability at the end instead. Pretty good at 2, probably going to keep it at 2. Really good card. Then the next, like probably the best card in the deck, I definitely have to say, is this Monkey D. Luffy. Super good. 7-drop, 7K. It's a blocker. On play, pretty much get to play a film or straw hat type character with a cost of 4 or less. So you can pretty much combo that off by playing the Brook or the Zoro or the Utah and the Nami too as well. Pretty much you play any one of these 4 cards off of this. Typically, whenever I'm playing it, it's always either the Zoro or the Utah. But if I have the Brook in hand along with the Nami, for 7 Dawn, I get to play 3 cards pretty much. It's 7K, a 5K, and a 5K. And that board presence right there alone is really good and it's really strong. Running this at 4, I definitely, there were times in the tournament where I had like 4 of these in hand and it was already turn 3, but even then, like it still was pretty good because I just kept playing them back to back to back, comboing off by playing another Zoro or a Utah or even another Nami. It was really good, and seeing too many of these in hand throughout the game, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to have. Then for the Don Quixote stuff that we run 3 sugars, and then along with the 4 Doflamingo 10 drops. So for the sugars, this is a really good card. For those who don't know, opponent's turn. Once per turn, if my opponent plays a character, I can go ahead and rest any character on the field or on their field. And then it also has an on-play effect where it rests a cost 4 or less, and it's also a 1K counter. This came up. This helped me win my matchup against Blue Doflamingo. They ended up playing a card. I was able to rest their 9-drop Mihawk, and that kind of pretty much sealed out the game for me. And so this card is really good. It's makes your opponent, they have to think about it before they play. They kind of have to play around it, and versus, they have to swing first, for the most part. But, putting them in that kind of scenario is always good because they always have to change up their plays for the most part. And then definitely the boss character of the deck, right? The 4 10-drop Doflamingo is definitely the best boss character in here. That one and the Monkey D. Luffy. This card right here is just, it's not searchable, but man, is it a threat? Your opponent always has to think about whether or not you're going to 10-drop them next turn, whether they only swing with 1 character or 2. They're always considering whether or not they want to turn everything sideways and swing for game or be conservative about it. And so they never really know if you have this in your hand because you never search it. Sometimes, like, there was a time where I didn't have this card in my hand at all, but my opponents still play like as if I had it. And so they were playing super conservative, and then it just forced me to, they thought they had to play around it even though I didn't even have it in my hand. So just the fact that you're running this deck, running Doflamingo, this 10-drop just in hand or not in hand, it's just a presence. And then onto my 2K counters that I run. I run the Tony Choppers. I run 4 of these, and then the 4 Shikis. This pretty much, these are just 2K counters, and having these in hand, right, obviously, it's always good. This deck relies heavily on counters. You always want to keep your cards alive on your board, and even, countering out of attacks for life. I really like these cards at 4. I love just having multiple counters in my hand. It didn't hurt too much, which is great. Then for the events that we run, I run a total of 4 Spider's Webs, 3 Punk Gibsons, 2 Thunder Baguas, and then along with a Judgment of Hell, and then the Union Armada. So for the Spider's Web, probably like the best event that, one of the best events that come out for that new OP04 set. Pretty much, it's a 4K, for 2 Dawn, it's a 4K counter, and then I get to restand any character I have. It's pretty much Paradise Waterfall, but for 4K instead. This is like, it works so well with the deck. You run so many blockers, so you are constantly just swing with your blockers, and then your opponent swings out live, you counter out, and then restand a blocker, and then it puts them in a really bad situation. I kid you not, I've restand blocker Luffy and Yuta so many times with this ability, and then I've also restood like a Nami too as well to make sure that it doesn't get cleared on the following turn, with multiple swings. The next one is Punk Gibson. This is really good. I really like the effect because pretty much it's like a 4K counter, and then I get a rest of cost 4 or less, and then his trigger works too as well. The trigger came up actually. I was playing against Law, and they were kind of go for pretty much for game, and I pulled this off for life. Ended up resting one of their characters to seal out the win for that game, which was great. The next one I run 2 Thunder Baguas. This one I've seen people run this at 4, and so and I understand it's a ramp up, right? So it's not. For Yuta's ability, you minus a Dawn, and so this kind of puts you back in play. But I'm trying to see if I can make some room for this. Kind of right now, I'm liking the ratio. This never came up. I never was able to play this during the tournament, but I never really needed it. It is really situational for the most part, but it is good though. Whenever, let's say your opponent or like you're going in the mirror match, or your opponent makes you go first. You either pull this off life or you play it when you have 2 or less life. You gotta pretty much ramp up back to an even curve, set you back up to play that 10-drop Doflamingo. And this deck, you always want to play on. You always want to try to go second. It works really well, and I'll kind of explain the curves too later when we go about talking in detail about that later. I ran 1 Judgment of Hell, never saw it. Saw it once, maybe like 1 game, but it was at the very end, drew, but I swung for game pretty much. This card's good. It's a -1 Dawn, and it's really good late game because you minus a Dawn late game. It's not bad because you usually get that Dawn back eventually. And so pretty much -3K on 2 characters or a leader your opponent has. I'm just testing it out. I'm going to keep it in here for right now because I'm sure it'll come up eventually. But we'll keep that there. Maybe I'll even swap this out for a Thunder Bagawa or maybe another Punk Gibson. I don't know yet. I'm a little iffy about it, but we'll see what happens. And then the Union Armada. I know a lot of people don't run this card. This card it's It's great. Pretty much what it is 2K or 2 cost a Don, right? Any film character or leader. So you can't use it on the Doflamingo, unfortunately, but pretty much all the characters you run, at least for my build, mine's pretty much the pure build for the most part for film. So this works. It sealed out a game definitely for me. Where my opponent, I was playing against Law, he ended up attaching, I think about getting up to 11K swing. He swung at my Nami, and pretty much what this is, right? It's also a 4K counter, but the character or the film character cannot be KO'd for the rest of the turn. So they swung super heavy for 11, trying to force a 4K out of hand and a 2K and a 1K, but I ended up playing this, ended up protecting him, making it immune, and the Nami survived. Pretty much from getting killed, because Nami, you always want to keep, play counters to keep Nami alive, because just that searchability is just so much advantage, and the card advantage in this deck is just so good. So that's pretty much it for the deck profile there. All right, and then so for the matchups, round 1, I am playing against Katakuri. For that match, pretty much it went really well. I thought at first my hand wasn't too good. I think about turn 3, I kind of mentioned in the deck profile, I had about 4 blocker Luffy's, didn't have a 10 drop in hand at all. But over time, I kind of was able to draw my 4 drops. And from there, I kind of just kept on playing. I kept playing those Luffy's back to back to back. I played all 4 of them. He would kill one, and then I'd be able to bring back, but just play another one, play another 4 drop. And just the advantage on that was really good. He didn't 10 drop me at the very end. He didn't have it, but even then I set up my board just in case he would 10 drop me, so that way I can clap back after that. But that one was pretty solid. The game 2, I played against Blue Doflamingo. That matchup was pretty good too. My hand was a little shaky, but we played everything pretty much for the most part, like on curve in the beginning. The tail end, I knew in this matchup, 10 drop Doflamingo was going to seal out the game for me if he ended up resting those Mihawks and the leader. In the end, right, he played his Doflamingo leader ability played off the life or off the top of his deck to play a character, but had a sugar on board, ended up resting one of his 2 Mihawks. Then he swung with his Mihawk, turned over to me, dropped the 10 drop, pretty much sealed out the game, froze the 2 Mihawks and the leader, swung at life, put his life to 0, came my turn around again, and I just swung for game for the most part. The next matchup was Zoro, and that Zoro deck, it came down really close, but I definitely had the numbers in hand for counters. I knew my opponent had a Diablo Jambe and a Rush Zoro in hand off of his searches, so I knew he had those, so I made sure to keep a life on board because my deck plays heavy on blockers. And so by that point, it kind of put him in a spot to where he needed to rip the Diablo Jambe. Or no, he didn't rip Diablo Jambe, but he did drop the 5-drop Luffy, the unblockable Luffy. But I counted pretty much the entire match of how many counters I had, what's the highest swing he could do, and pretty much sealed up the game there. Ended up dropping 10-drop Dofi at the end to freeze everything, and then swung for game the following turn after that. The 4th round, played Trafalgar Law. Pretty nervous about that. That matchup's pretty tough, just because Law is just so fast and it plays his characters really quickly, and it really tried to clear life for the most part really early. And I made sure to just count out of the earlier stuff. I had a lot of counters in hand, a lot of events in hand, and so I constantly was just trying to counter out of all of his swings. When it came to the tail end again, I dropped the 10-drop Dofi, pretty much freezing a Restand Law, the leader, and a Zoro. But he had like another Restand Law and I think it was a Blocker Law. But like I mentioned before, when I pulled off life, I got the Punk Gibson to rest the Blocker Law for his swing for game for the most part. But even if I didn't even pull Punk Gibson, I had enough counters in hand. And that's where this deck is just so good. It just has so many counters in hand, so many events it could play just because the leader ability is just so insane. And then my final match in the finals, played against another Zoro deck. All the decks I played were all from previous sets, so it kind of shows how strong Doflamingo is, comparative to all those old set decks. In that last match, same thing again. Pretty much was playing to just fight for board, clearing, making sure his board wasn't getting too wide. Came down to at the very end whether he wanted to drop that 5-drop Luffy, and he did. Ended up swinging for I think about like 11 or so, but I had 13k in hand to counter out of that, which was great. And so I ended up winning the match there. All right, so now I just kind of want to talk about some of the changes I would make for sure for this deck. For this deck profile for Doflamingo. Mainly stuff that I put in. I didn't see any mirror matches, and mirror matches are pretty tough. I definitely would say something to supplement that or kind of help out in mirror matches. I'd say with adding Diamante. You're able to restand him even if he's frozen by Dofi Leader's effect or Dofi 10-drop effect. So if they end up dropping it, freezing, you can just restand him with throwing a Dawn under him and then end your turn, and then he'll be able to restand. So I think he'll definitely be a good addition to put in. I'm not too sure what I'd take out just yet, but I definitely want to maybe put like 2 more of him in. It also gives you another option on that 6 Dawn turn to play another 5-drop other than the Guild Tesoro that I have too, or a 4-drop Zoro. But definitely think that's a good idea. Another one would be another Punk Gibson. I only have Gibson at 3, but I definitely would put in another one, a 4th one, just because I think it's good in matchups where it's you find yourself. I mean, mainly specifically like Law. Law is a tough matchup against Dofi. Law moves super fast, so having a Gibson kind of helps that out. Resting their low cost guys, whether it's a blocker or one in like a Zoro or something, a Rush Zoro, the Starter Zoro, either or. I definitely think would be really good. And then same with another Sugar. I'm definitely going to add another Sugar too for that matchup as well, right? Playing that on play, resting a blocker. Pretty much, or any kind of standing character that they leave up, or like a Zoro or anything like that. I definitely think a Sugar would be good. So probably another 1 Gibson, another Sugar, and then probably throwing 2 Diamantes. Not too sure yet. Kind of haven't filtered out exactly what I will take out, but for right now, we'll make some adjustments, and maybe we'll get a future deck profile coming soon. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the Film Dofi deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. And as always, Grandline Gaming, out.